she grapple on my hook till I make it to the Underground Observatory. Welcome to Baggage Claim, an unofficial Jet Lag the Game companion podcast. Today, we're unpacking episode 3 of season 15, Tag All-Stars. I'm Jaya.
I'm Casey.
And I'm Kira.
Casey, when was the last time you had to navigate with a physical map? How good are you at it?
I would say the last time I had to navigate with a physical map was probably when I went for a cross-country road trip a few years ago. I had a printout triptych planner with all of my different days and routes planned. Just in case we got out of cell reception, I had to rely on the maps. I think that I'm actually okay at reading a map. However, I would say that I'm actually maybe better with a physical map than I am with a phone map. And I know this is a wild statement, but for some reason, I am just so deeply directionally challenged. It is something that I live with every day. I try really hard. It's not for lack of effort, but the number of times that I will have my phone with Google Maps and just immediately exit somewhere and walk the wrong direction for like 10 minutes and not realize. Like, I just started a new job. This happened to me this week. I left the metro, walked, it was like a 5-minute walk to my office, walked fully the wrong way for like 8 minutes before I realized and had to turn around.
That's brutal.
The astounding part is that you get so far before you realize it.
It's really not anything I could justify. But when I am looking at the map, I'm like, okay, I can't figure out which way the arrow is pointing, like the little Google Maps arrow.
Okay, respectfully, I don't know what either of you are talking about. Navigating using Google Maps on your phone while walking is truly the easiest way to navigate.
Okay, no, let's not bring that tone here.
So, I last navigated with a physical map over Easter. I went on an orienteering club event where we went to the Thetford Forest.
What?
And they dropped us into the middle of the forest with a physical map and said there are 10 Easter eggs. And we've marked them with a dot. Go find them. And the map...
That is excellent.
The map was like, area of rough terrain over here. Area of fallen logs over here. And so I would say I contributed almost nothing. It was maybe 4.5 hours. It was freezing cold in truly, again, the middle of an unpaved, untrailed forest. And I found it extremely difficult. I would say that I am not very good at navigating using a physical map, but I did really appreciate this episode because I am studying in the UK and I do not have a UK phone number, nor do I have UK data. I'm really stubborn on this and I won't get it.
You've lived there for over a year now.
I know, and I'm not gonna change at this point, which means that every time I need to navigate somewhere, I have to either pull up the map ahead of time or I just need to like figure out in my head, I'm gonna go straight until this street and then turn left and then just navigate by vibe because I can't use data anywhere. And so I do feel really seen needing to be like, well, I guess I'll just look around.
My most recent time using a physical map was 2 weeks ago. I was going to the Green Bank Observatory in the National Radio Quiet Zone, so of course there is not phone service all around the area. And I've been there once, so I kind of knew my way around, but I had a physical map and the person in my passenger seat was not good at reading the physical map, but luckily there was a list of instructions, so I would just say, Laura, what's the next one? Let's jump into our recap. As a die-hard fan of Adam and Michelle, this episode took years off my life and then added them back on just as quickly. This episode started with only a little while remaining in day 1. Sam and Toby are heading back to Paris so they can hop on a train to Strasbourg in the morning. Ben and Brian make it to the Charles de Gaulle airport and throw away their grappling hooks. And Adam and Michelle make it to Strasbourg and pull a challenge. They only need 1,340 coins to make it to Zermatt by lunchtime on day 2, which they earn by stacking 4 very small rocks by the river, and then getting cursed to not use their phones for navigation for the remainder of this run. But because this is Adam and Michelle we're talking about, they've already memorized the rest of their route. The game continues the next morning with everyone looking absolutely gorgeous as if they got up early to blow dry their hair, and Toby wearing an iconic Toby the Tram Engine dress from Thomas and Friends. Adam and Michelle's biggest obstacle is getting back to the train station before their train leaves, which turns out to be more of a problem than they expected when they go the wrong way immediately. Ben and Brian have a shockingly chill time in Charles de Gaulle Airport, making it to their gate before boarding and actually departing early. Sam and Toby get on their train to Strasbourg, sending Toby absolutely spiraling about the fact that they need to rely on Ben and Brian to make the catch. While traveling, Adam, Michelle, Ben, and Brian all stop in the snack zone, before Adam and Michelle reach Basel and Ben and Brian land in Zurich. Brian and Ben here, despite landing early, had relied on the assumption that the runners would have to stop for challenges, so Adam and Michelle zip ahead, ending about 20 minutes ahead of them. Way off in the north, Sam gets to flex his French listening skills as the train out of Strasbourg gets cancelled, solidifying that Sobi will not be making the catch this round. The runners finally find physical maps on the wall of the train carriage and on the tables, confirming that they have to cross part of Zermatt to reach the cog railway that will take them to the observatory, their final location. The episode ends with them weeping at the beautiful scenery, praying they can get on a train before Ben and Brian make it to Zermatt, and contemplating how possible it would be to trek up to the observatory on foot. To conclude our recap, I've come up with a title to highlight the most important moment of the episode. I think one of the really big things that happened here was that Sam and Toby just had no shot at making it.
Yeah.
So my title is Sobi Gets Left Behind.
Aww.
Do you guys have any alternatives?
Those poor blondes.
I know.
I do have an alternate title. If I brought a grappling hook and you brought a grappling hook, who's flying the plane?
It's so funny that they both brought a grappling hook.
I'm sure that was premeditated.
But for what?
For fun, I guess?
That was my favorite part of the entire episode.
I was trying so hard to have a grappling hook title.
Crying, laughing.
A grappler? I hardly know her.
It just works in every situation. It's not our fault.
Maybe that's my actual title. She grapple on my hook till I make it to the underground observatory. Who up grappling their hook?
Who up grappling their hook is so funny.
Okay. After much discussion, I'm changing my title. My title is Who Up Grappling Their Hook?
Oh boy.
And with that, Casey, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Jaya. Welcome back to the Strat Chat, our segment where we break down the strategy and gameplay of the episode. I would argue that this episode was fairly light in active strategizing from the runners and the chasers. The runners made some smart moves in episode 2 about using their freeze, but this episode consisted of fairly smooth sailing once Adam and Michelle were on the Swiss train network. They played it safe with the rock stacking challenge and pulled a curse that Michelle's memorization of routes prepared them for, and so they didn't need to slow down with their well-timed connections. Ben and Brian were able to make their flight, which even left early, but they still ended up behind the runners, and Sam and Toby were hours behind. With this season having easier challenges on average, making coins quicker to obtain, I think there's something to be said about the renewed strategic strength of runners going as deep into their regions as possible to force the next runners to dig themselves out, but I still think that Sam and Toby made the right call on their run. The question I want to pose to you both is this. At what point should the chasers abandon the strategy of following behind the runners and waiting for them to stop? Typically in this game, runners have to stop to pull challenges, or they encounter a delayed train, or they miss a connection. But when Ben and Brian saw Adam and Michelle coasting through, should they have re-strategized? Or was there even an alternative that could have worked here?
I like this question a lot because I think sitting down to regroup and re-strategize can sometimes be so important for the chasers, but they don't often take that time on purpose. They really only take that time when they're forced to.
Yeah.
And I think in this situation, maybe even in general, I don't know how possible it would have been for them to reroute, or like what any alternatives could have been if they wanted to re-strategize and abandon the strategy of following behind the runners, because there really wasn't much of a route that they could take to get around the runners or detour but get closer to their end location. Partially because they're just so close to Adam and Michelle's end location, but also partially because there just isn't too much around there that's also high speed that they could have taken.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think what's tricky about this situation is that I would sort of argue that every team is behaving optimally, which is why it's so hard to see this sort of stalemate where Adam and Michelle aren't going to slow down and they don't need to, and Ben and Brian are taking the quickest route, where part of the challenge of Switzerland is that, as they've talked about on the layover, and I think a little bit in the episodes, the Swiss rail network is really fast and really consistent while still being slow speed, but there isn't a faster speed route anywhere nearby. And even if Ben and Brian had flown into Geneva much later, I think it was maybe an hour later, or if they'd gone south to Dijon and then gone north again, I still think that this is the best route for them, what they actually did. I think it gets them closest to Adam and Michelle earliest. And so I think what I would have liked to see in this episode was for Ben and Brian, while they're on one of their trains, to call Sam and Toby just to get four brains on the case. I don't know whether there's anything that could have been done strategically. I don't know if maybe there was another route that could be slightly faster. I sort of doubt it, but in this kind of situation where it seems like everyone is behaving optimally, but their backs are just against the wall, I think that's the time when you just have to get more brains on the case just in case.
Yeah, I think the part that was surprising to me was that the two teams of chasers, once Ben and Brian were getting on the flight, and also just once they hit day 2, they weren't communicating with each other at all.
Like, Sam and
but
Toby
they
didn't
had
even...
plenty of time to. Sam and Toby didn't know if they had made their flight or not. Like, that really surprised me, because I do think strategically the place where the two teams of chasers could come in conflict with each other is if there's two routes and they're starting in the same place and one is better but one is safer. But that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is that pretty much one team is kind of out of the game and the other team is going to be making the catch. And I don't see any real realm where strategically it's not advantageous for all four people to be trying to contribute to the one team that's making the catch.
I think that the one caveat is that I think that it is strategic for Sam and Toby to conceal their location, because assuming there gets to be a next run, Ben and Brian would be the next runners. And so Sam and Toby shouldn't reveal where they are because they'll soon be chasers. But Ben and Brian have every incentive to share their location with
there's no advantage
Sam and Toby
for them
because
to hide their location.
At this point, they are not competitors. At this point,
no.
Both teams of chasers need Ben and Brian to make the catch ASAP.
Yeah. So, I mean, Casey, for your original question, I feel like this is kind of a cop-out answer, but I think the best point to abandon the strategy of following behind the runners is whenever you have an opportunity to get around them.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a route around them, you probably should take it unless it's super risky. Or at least if you have a route around them, you should stop and think before you get there of, okay, what are we actually doing here? And not just continue following. But I don't see very many opportunities where they could have even possibly gotten around them.
But so I think there is something to be said about the larger strategy of when to follow behind versus when to cut someone off. And I think a big benefit of trying to cut the runner off would be if you know they have to go through a certain choke point and if there is a higher speed option available. So I think if there is certainly a triangle where the runner is going to take some slower option and the chasers are able to go faster and then they are guaranteed to meet up, I think that that's a situation where it is worth it to take the risk of not going directly behind. But if there's a situation where there's not a guaranteed choke point, where, for instance, in tag 3, there was the situation of the stalemate where if Ben and Adam went one direction, Sam could have gone a different direction, and then they may have never met. And so that is where I think it gets tricky. I think that that's different than what we have here, because there really is only one straight line. So Ben and Brian know exactly where they need to go in order to cut off Adam and Michelle. There's no surprise in routes. And in fact, in the episode, Adam and Michelle were talking about how there's no use in using the cloak power-up because their route is not a surprise. They're going on a very direct and very obvious
They're taking
route.
a straightforward route.
And so I think that if Ben and Brian had the opportunity to not just follow behind and instead do something funky to go faster, I think that would have been worth it because there's no risk because they know where Adam and Michelle are going to be. But there just was no faster option.
Thinking about the stalemate situation that you were also bringing up, I feel like in this game, specifically in 3-team tag, if you put the same two teams in the same situation, they would be a lot less likely to have a stalemate now because you could have a team of chasers behind them and a team of chasers in front of them. And so the runner is being pressured from behind to also move forwards, in which case they're going to get caught by the ones in front of them.
That's a great
if
point.
The chasers work together effectively. And so that sort of stalemate, I really don't think they need to be as worried about as maybe they would have been if they had a route in front of Adam and Michelle.
I hadn't even considered that. I think that's a really good point.
Well, we'll see if Ben and Brian manage to catch up to Adam and Michelle next episode, but for now, I will turn things over to Kira.
Thanks, Casey. Welcome back to the U-Turn, our segment where I propose two opposite strategies and you each have to defend one of them, verbally sparring to see which direction is better. We've now seen 3.5-ish seasons of tag, spanning a ton of different strategies for both the runners and the chasers. So I'm going to pitch some opposing strategies to you, and I want you guys to discuss which strategy you think is stronger. I feel like we've talked a fair amount about the chaser strategy so far this season, so I have 3 U-turns about the runners to propose to you. First, we have, should you prioritize getting lots of coins early on in your run? Or should you prioritize getting physically really far away early on in your run? What do you guys think?
I would argue that you should prioritize getting lots of coins early on in your run. First, because you're not going to get far without them. You need coins to go anywhere. You don't need to be physically too far ahead of the chasers to get to your end location or to win. And there have been pretty few runs that we've seen where somebody was just pulling challenges as they went and running on only a few coins. And I feel like that's really where we see runners get screwed a lot, is if they run out of coins and have to get off at a station in the middle of nowhere, pull a challenge there, there's no way that they can get on another train and go to somewhere that it would be easier to do the challenge. So either they need to veto a challenge if they can't do it in whatever miscellaneous rural location they've ended up in, or they need to figure out how to do a challenge in a place where it might not be possible or easy.
I would argue that getting physically far early actually accomplishes some of the same goals that you were talking about, where, especially in like an early run, during those 45 minutes where the chasers are frozen, hopping on the first train or a high-speed train or something out of there not only gives you a head start in heading towards your end location, but I think it actually sets up the runner well to be able to do challenges along the way. It allows them to get out and perhaps take advantage of a gap in train schedules or train departures, and also often getting them more set up to be in maybe a more optimal location to do challenges. Hopefully heading towards maybe a larger hub that is not a rural location in the middle of nowhere, but actually allows you to do challenges. I also think that when runners have prioritized getting a lot of coins early, that has tended to be in the strategy of kind of mining coins, like going somewhere slightly inaccessible and just getting as many coins as possible for that straight shot later. I think that what is a little tricky about that strategy is that, one, it obviously relies a lot on luck and being able to use all of those coins, but also I think that it is a little bit more predictable. Once the chasers see that the runner has stopped has gone away from the train station, the thought is, okay, they're probably doing challenges.
Yeah.
Versus, I think we see in this episode, Ben and Brian are really waiting for Adam and Michelle as the runners to be stopping to do challenges. It is far harder to strategize and figure out how to tag them when they're just moving ahead. And so I do think that there is a balance to be made.
Part of why they can do that is because they got a lot of coins early. But they had to get far away to be able to get their coins. So there really is a balance here where, yeah, I agree. I think immediately getting physically far, immediately you should just get on a train. You should get on whatever train you can get out of there. Because if you're in the same place when the 45 minutes are up, you're screwed. But pretty soon after that, you should be really thinking about coins and challenges rather than your next connection.
Well, and just thinking about like a very extreme example of, do you get on the first train during that 45-minute freeze period and go? Or do you pull a challenge before going? I honestly think getting on that train, getting out of there, is essentially still maintaining that 45-minute freeze period. You're still going to be, let's say, 45 minutes ahead on average if you're on that train. But then you're further away. And so if something bad does happen, if you pull a curse or if you have to veto a card, then you at least have some physical distance between you and the chasers.
The second U-turn that I want to propose is, should the runners hide from the chasers physically? So that might be literally hiding probably at the station that they have to be at next. Or should they hide from the chasers more strategically, like getting off a stop early or making a more inconvenient connection in order to try to get around where they think the chasers are? What do you guys think?
I feel like I wanted to say strategically, but just from the evidence of the previous seasons of this show, I do think that hiding physically has been more successful. I think that a lot of times when the runner has tried to strategically get off a stop early or kind of run in a different direction to make a different train to confuse the chasers, everyone's gotten so good at this game through playing multiple times that they've actually often been able to predict that they were going to do that and then follow them. And I know that hiding physically can be complicated. I think Adam and his disguises was a great idea that never really worked out because of his kind of distinctive walk or not being around a lot of people. But I do think that you could at least count on some chaos inherent in like the physical aspect, whereas maybe the chasers might be able to play the mind games alongside the runner and guess that strategic move.
I think that's true, but I do think that physically relies more on the runner just getting lucky. Because you have to hide in a publicly accessible location, and you can't just, like, be in a bathroom. And even the photo booth was totally fair, but it was on the edge. And so I think physically hiding, because you need to be in a publicly accessible location, it relies on both being lucky that the place that you're in has somewhere to hide, and that the chasers aren't going to run next to you. And I do think that if you're hiding from somebody physically, like, you still need a way out of there. You're still going to need to leave. And so you need to figure some way to juke the runners. Versus strategically, like, yeah, you can still get really unlucky strategically. Like in Tag 2 when Ben got off his train early and then the chasers also happened to switch trains early and they happened to not run into each other at a train station. It was like the first or second time that Ben actually juked the chasers, where he was trying to do it strategically. He ended up physically just sort of not being noticed, but that was something that was under his control. I think, yes, you can still get unlucky strategically, but getting off a stop early or making a weird connection or going in a direction that's maybe not completely optimal but will confuse them is something that you can decide whether or not to do, versus physically just feels like, okay, yeah, if that didn't work, then let me just try and hide as a last-ditch effort.
That makes sense.
I think you should do both. Strategically first, and then if you're screwed, then hide physically.
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of a 1-2 punch.
That's a great point. Okay, and my last U-turn is, should the runners pull a challenge when they need it, or should they try to have a challenge active at all times?
This one is tricky because both really have pros and cons. But I would say in favor of having one active and always just doing challenges even when you don't need more coins is what we're seeing with Adam and Michelle right now, where they had 31 minutes until a train, so they pulled a challenge so that they could veto it if they needed to. And they ended up getting really lucky with the Find the Chasers card, because they knew exactly where the chasers were. If they had said, oh, we don't have enough time to try a challenge and then veto it, and not drawn that card, they wouldn't have ended up with those coins. They wouldn't have ended up with enough coins to get straight to Strasbourg, and they probably would have been caught way easier. And so just constantly doing challenges, while yes, there's the risk that you're going to get cursed or get stuck in a veto period, if you time it well, you're going to be okay. And if you end up with way more coins than you thought you were going to, you can do a Hail Mary run, or you can do a run that goes higher speed or longer distance than you thought you were going to be able to make originally, and make this kind of incredible run that we're seeing Adam and Michelle doing right now.
So I agree in that there is a lot left to chance and to timing when pulling challenges. I think that pulling a challenge only when you need it is a slightly safer option. I'm thinking of a specific scenario, not even just with a curse, but with a challenge where there might be just a few minutes of, well, should we go for it? Should we not? And in that intervening time, if you then need to veto, that could have an impact on your transportation out of that location. I'm thinking about, I think it was in Tag 3 when Adam pulled a challenge about having to light the card on fire within a certain amount of time, or the card was automatically vetoed. That 1 minute could have an impact, and you'd hope that maybe if someone pulled that card and they knew they didn't have that minute to spare and they vetoed it right away, but there might be just enough doubt in that moment to go for it. And I do think that if a card were pulled and the runner is leaving maybe a larger city to go to a more rural location, that might actually impact their decision to get on a train instead of trying to complete the challenge if it was going to net them a lot of coins.
That's true. I agree that only pulling a challenge when you need it is safer in terms of not getting cursed. But I do still think that it's riskier in terms of what if you run out of coins, or what if the chasers do something and end up getting in front of you and you need to run around them, but you have to stop for a challenge.
Yeah. I honestly think both of them are kind of gambles in opposite ways.
Yeah. Both of them are just which way do you feel more comfortable gambling.
Exactly.
Well, I do think at this point we've seen lots of tag, but we still don't know exactly what's going to work out well. And so I'm excited to see which strategies pay off later in this season. But with that, I will pass things over to Jaya.
Thanks, Kira. The real star of the show today was the highly efficient Swiss trains. So I have come to this game bearing just a list of train facts. It started with Swiss train efficiency and then kind of devolved, so there's a bit about everything. All of these train facts come from countries they visited in jet lag. And I want you to tell me, is it Switzerland or is it a different country? And if it's a different country, which one is it?
Is it called Swiss or Miss?
Whoa!
It wasn't, but that's amazing.
Is it called Swiss or Miss?
Yeah, Kira, this is called Swiss or Miss now. Thank you.
What I will say before we begin is that I think either in the actual episode or in the layover, several of them talk about how they all know the Swiss train network really, really well, like maybe more so than any other country. Whoa. I don't feel that way as a viewer of jet lag. I feel like I don't know anything about the Swiss train network.
Yeah, I don't know pretty much anything about Swiss trains. So first, which country is home to the only 100% solar-powered train?
I'm so ignorant about trains. I'm gonna say that's Switzerland because people love Swiss trains.
So this is going to be really embarrassing because I used to work in transportation policy and I feel like I should know more about this, but I did not do a lot of train stuff. I think it's not Switzerland only because of like the landscape of Switzerland. I don't think would get like really good solar power. You know what? I think I'll say South Korea. I know nothing about their solar power, but maybe.
This is not for points, but I'm gonna guess Japan.
Well, regardless, you're all wrong.
What?
We're all wrong.
It's Australia.
Oh.
That feels so obvious.
Yeah.
I tried to start with an easy one, and then neither of you considered what's the place with the most sun.
Well, we didn't think of that.
In case you do get a point for it being not Switzerland.
Yay.
But nobody's getting the what country is this point.
Yikes.
Boo. That's so embarrassing.
In the 1960s in this country, as cars got more frequent and train operations suffered, the train agency hiked fares and cut back on rush hour trains. In retaliation, trains were vandalized, stations were set on fire, and one station master was taken hostage by an enraged mob.
I have a guess.
Yeah.
I think it's not Switzerland. I think it's France.
Oh, I was gonna say France. But I agree. I don't think this is Switzerland. I feel like the Swiss are not really known for that kind of behavior. I'm gonna say the US.
You're both correct that it's not Switzerland. This is Japan.
Whoa! I wouldn't have guessed that.
That's
I
really
was not expecting that.
interesting.
That's why I brought this fact in, was because I was like, that's not something that I would have guessed from Japan. Which country has the highest rail usage in the world?
I'll say this is Switzerland, because I think it's very well connected.
I think I'm also going to say Switzerland. I almost thought about saying Germany, but I think that there are a lot of parts in Germany that are not reached as well by the train network.
Are both correct.
Yay!
Each person takes an average of 53 rail trips per year, covering about 1,400 miles.
That's a
Wow.
ton.
Right?
Oh, I wish we lived in a train society.
Oh, I know.
Everything would be better.
In this country, the first rail route opened in October 1872. These trains had few amenities and lacked toilets, so there are many stories of people sticking their butts out windows.
I'm going to say this is Switzerland.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll say the US. I don't think that timeline makes any sense.
Kira, you're right, it's not Switzerland. Again, this is Japan.
Oh!
Who knows how many of the stories are true, but my favorite one that I saw was that a former samurai was fined for sticking his buttocks outside the window to fart.
That's so polite. That's so polite.
This country held the rail speed record for 8 years from 1966 to 74, which they got by mounting 2 jet engines to the top of a diesel train car.
Whoa.
I feel like we're playing Train of Lies. I'm like, that's false. That didn't happen.
Honestly, yeah.
I'm going to say that's the US, because that sounds like the kind of weird, crazy stuff that would happen.
I'll say South Korea?
Like, Japan's trains are the fastest in the world now.
Because they have bullet trains, right?
But I feel like maybe they weren't back then. I don't know.
The phrasing of it makes me think that this is not the current winner.
Casey, you are correct. This is the US.
Yeah!
It does feel US.
Yeah. For the 175th anniversary of this country's first railway, one train company decided to run a train that was nearly 2 kilometers long. To do this, they strung together 25 new trains and ran it over a 25-kilometer route on the UNESCO World Heritage line that I can't say out loud because it'll give away the language. This line is famous for its sharp curves and steep hills, which means the photos of the train look genuinely bonkers insane.
This feels like Switzerland to me.
I was also going to say Switzerland.
You are correct, this is Switzerland.
That's
They
so
love their
cool. I want to
heritage
see
trains.
pictures.
I'll send you guys pictures later. It's honestly sick. Like, there's just like these wild rolling hills, and you see elevated train tracks around them, and then
That's
just
so
one
cool.
train that's like wrapping around the whole hill and going over a bridge and crossing itself. In this country's language, there's an idiom meaning you didn't understand a single thing. That is, I only understand the train station. Which comes from when there's a loudspeaker announcement at a train station and you can't understand anything from it besides the name of the train station.
That's amazing.
Okay, so first of all, that's correct, and we should all have that saying.
Right?
I want to say that's Germany.
I also was feeling Germany, but I think I'm going to say France.
Should've listened to your gut, this was Germany.
No!
This country has the largest fully electrified rail network in the world. So 100% of the trains on this country's network are electric, and it's the biggest country that's done that.
This is crazy.
I'll say Switzerland. Well, wait, hold on.
What are even countries
What's
that
a
are
cog
fully
rail?
electric?
What's a cog train? Is that... is that going to be embarrassing? I'm going to say Switzerland.
Can I say not Switzerland, but not make a guess?
I want to know what your guess is, but it doesn't need to count.
I don't know.
Not America.
I don't know what any country is that would even have fully electric trains. Liechtenstein.
The largest to be Liechtenstein would be diabolical.
There's only one.
Casey is correct. This is Switzerland.
Whoa!
It's only one of 11 countries to be 100% electric. The Swiss rail network started being electrified around 1916, and 77% of it was electric by the beginning of World War II, which is so early in my mind.
Wow.
See, 11 isn't so many. If it had only been one, it could have been Liechtenstein.
I want to find out what the other 10 are.
Oh, yeah.
Armenia, Hong Kong, Singapore, Qatar, Mauritius, Puerto Rico, Macau, Liechtenstein, and Monaco.
I literally made the list.
You made the list.
I feel way better now. My whole goal was to just pick a country that would have been on the list.
This country holds the world record speed for wheeled trains at 574 kilometers an hour.
I'll say Switzerland again.
I'll say France.
Kira, it's France.
Ooh, yay!
Nice! I guess.
Because I think they have really fast, high-speed trains.
Mm-hmm. Right, and Switzerland, I should have known this, because they just said in the layover that Switzerland doesn't classify their fast trains as high speed.
Finally, this country's trains jumped straight from coal to electric. And in contrast, most countries went from coal to diesel and then electric.
Switzerland.
The UK.
It is Switzerland. Electrifying so fast at the beginning of World War II had a lot to do with their coal being mostly imported from Germany and France, because they don't have natural coal deposits. And so they started electrifying before diesel trains really fully took hold.
That's actually so
fascinating.
Cool.
And so they had a way easier time electrifying than a lot of other countries, because they never went to diesel, so they hadn't wasted a bunch of money on already getting a new train stock.
Wow.
That's genuinely so fascinating.
Isn't that
very inspiring?
This has been one of my favorite games we've ever played.
Yes.
Really?
This was so much fun.
Well, congratulations, Casey. You have won Swiss or Miss.
Yay!
And with that, we'll move into our Rosebud Thorn. Casey, why don't you go first?
My rose is that I really loved the double snack zone. I thought that waiting until the third episode really had me chomping at the bit for a snack zone, and it was edited very beautifully, and I loved that Ben's favorite food is an advent calendar. That's so random. My thorn is that I am personally truly devastated that Ben and Brian had to get rid of their grappling hooks, but again,
oh my God,
that moment had me crying laughing. And my bud, unrelated to this season, but I was very intrigued and delighted to see the Jetlag and Magic the Gathering crossover sponsored episode. I haven't watched yet, but I'm very excited.
It's crazy.
Kira, how about you?
My rose is that it's so exciting to see so much physical movement from all the teams. I feel like this episode really had the high-octane feeling that the tag format brings so well. My thorn is that it was so sad to see Sam and Toby look so defeated. I'm sure things will turn around in some way, but it was really tough to see. And my bud is that no matter what happened to the next episode, no matter whether a tag happens or if something crazy happens, I'm just excited for some beautiful shots of the Alps.
My rose, similarly, wow, it's so pretty there. All of the shots out the window, especially from Michelle and Adam, just, had me yearning to go touch a rock. And when Brian was, looking longingly out the window at the river, I felt that in my soul. My thorn is that in my notes, I wrote down some form of Michelle and Adam are very scared, 12 separate times.
Oh, no.
Which meant that this whole episode I was also very scared. And my bud is that they're probably going to the observatory. And with that, thank you for waiting at Baggage Claim. Let us know your thoughts on socials at baggageclaimpod or over email, which is in the episode description. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a comment or give us a follow. We'll see you next week at the Gornograd Observatory's Baggage Claim. Don't let your bags fall off the mountain. Goodbye!
Goodbye!
Goodbye! If memory serves me correctly, I think Casey was wearing a Thomas the Tank Engine shirt when I was born.